everyone, it's Karen. I'm back to share how I stitch on napkins. I had said I would do a video and things have just gotten in the way and I've never got it finished as of yet, and so today I'm going to make an attempt at that. So what exactly do I mean by stitching on napkins? If you're following in the Journal of Stitchery, I had posted that I had done that this was a napkin. The bunny was from a napkin, and that I had just stitched over it and added him to my page. And so that's an example of using a napkin to stitch on. And I like it because you can see all the shading in the napkin on the bunny is all still there, and I don't necessarily shade it all in. I use that shading and accent with my other stitches to create the look I want. I'm just going to show you a couple more examples and then I'll show you some of how I do it. This is actually a piece of rice paper, and I really like the floral design on it. It was a full rectangle and I made it into, it'll be like a side tuck in a book or a journal, and I used the pattern of the flowers on the rice paper and just stitched on it exactly the same way as using a napkin. You could do it with rice paper as well, and I really like how that turned out. Some of it I improvise and add in extra stitches that aren't on the napkin after I get the base stitches down that are, and then I added the little butterfly. This is one I did on, this is the napkin I used, and I used this portion of the napkin right here with the 4 birdhouses and the flowers at the bottom, and there they are side by side. And it just takes this napkin up a whole nother level. You get all the texture, you get a more vibrant colors, and you can see how, I followed the general pattern. I used it for the birdhouses, almost identical. And then in the flowers at the bottom, some of them I did exactly following the flowers in the napkin, the daffodils. And this one I added a little butterfly right here. Here I added in French knots rather than doing the tulips. Here I added in bullion knots instead of the purple tulip. I added another butterfly on right here on the opposite one. Down in this corner, I added a little flower here amongst the greenery, and on here it was a little tulip. But I just, you don't have to follow it exactly. It just can give you some general ideas. And when you're stitching on paper, it's your background and your stitches just go through into the paper, and the napkin adheres on that way. Don't use any glue or anything. I start with a few pins in place to hold it until I get some stitches done, and then I just leave it and stitch away. If you put any glue down, it gums up your needle, so it gets to be a bit of a mess. And you can see on the edge of this one, the napkin ended, and I've made sure that I've just torn it away so that it blends nicely onto the music paper. And then afterwards, I just put a little bit of glue stick just along the edge to hold that down so it doesn't get torn up. But just at the very end, I did that, not before. And this has been made into something to add to a journal. It's actually put onto a hinge with an envelope, and then this all can fit onto a journal page. This is another little small bunny that I did, and she's a napkin as well, and then I just stitched her all up. She turned out super cute. And this side of her whiskers, you can see that the whiskers are here. These ones will get added on when I attach her to whatever page I'm going to attach her to. I use little sort of stitches here and there that you can't really see, but I'll put her 3 whiskers in over onto the page when I attach her in onto a page. And this is a tiny little bird that I did. I've done them before, and then they look super cute added onto little projects too. So I've got 3 birds I'm working on here that I'm just going to show you how I do the stitching. So it's the same application for ever using napkins. They're usually 3-ply, and you want to separate out the plies because you want only one ply of napkin to stitch with. So your other two plies come off and you're left with that one ply, very thin piece of napkin. And then I use, this is an old pillowcase, just cotton, plain cotton fabric. And when I say I pin it, I usually just pick a couple spots to put some pins in. And then I would just cut this down so that I just have enough fabric to work with. I don't want a lot of fabric. You don't need all that. So this I'll put away. I'll be using that for other ones. And so you can see I have the 3 birds here in different stages. So this one is pinned and not started to be stitched on at all. That one would be how it starts. This one, I had it pinned on and I did some stitching on it. You can see I've done just plain like back stitch all the way around, and I did some straight stitches, and I did a couple of French knots and more straight stitches here. I used a variegated thread so that I got this changing of color. And the actual bird is sort of this greeny color, and I've left that in the background, and it's a little bit yellow here. And then it has a yellow breast, so I just used a yellow embroidery floss. 2 or 3 strands is usually what I use, and I just put that, a back stitch along the edge there. And I will finish this one off. I'll do the branches and the flowers and that, and then this could be, and then I just fussy cut them out. So this little bunny was initially on a piece of fabric as well. And then after I'm finished doing all the stitching, I very carefully, with a very sharp little scissors, just fussy cut. And there is a little bit of white all around the edge of it, just really the same as when you fussy cut things out of paper. You leave a little edge on them, the same as with this. But I find that it blends right into the project. Afterwards, you hardly even notice that white background. Let me just pull this one. Well, you can see on my Journal of Stitchery, on this one, you can see a little bit of the white there around the bunny's face. The rest of it here, a little bit along his arm. Everything that you stitch up close can help cover some of that white. Like here, I stitched this flower right up close to the arm. But I don't worry about that because to me that doesn't look any different than when you fussy cut out a picture. So that's that one started, and as the stitching is on there, I've taken the pins out so I don't have to worry. And when I'm stitching, I hold it with this between my fingers like this, and this between my thumb and finger underneath. And so I kind of hold it with some tension between here and here, and that keeps the napkin nice and flat and tight onto the fabric. And when I'm bringing the thread up to stitch, I'll show you on this one because I've loaded some threads ready to go on this one. Between these 2 fingers, my thumb and this finger, I'm going to stitch the leaf here. I just, if I have to, if the needle isn't coming up really easily, I just wiggle it a little bit, and then it slides up really easily. And I try and use, like I said, 2 or 3 strands of floss, although I have done as many as all 6. When I did these French knots here, I used 6 threads, and this is ribbon that is 4 millimeters wide, silk ribbon, and that came through no problem and did not rip the napkin at all. The needles I usually choose a long, thin, well, doesn't have to be long necessarily, but thin with a small eye. That's why 2 or 3 strands is perfect, because if you need to, you can use a needle threader. My favorite is this DMC needle threader, and it works really well. I find this particular part of it, the metal part, slides in the eye, small eyes, really well and pulls the thread through really easily. But it has the 3 different options on it for threading, so it's a great little threader to assist you with that if that's an issue. So I've come up to the top here, and I just want this, the leaves have a bit of a two-tone color, and I'm gonna sort of follow that with my threads. So I've threaded up both a dark green and a light green thread, and I just want to pull that down. And I do sometimes do a bit of a couching stitch almost, where I come along to follow the stitch, and then I just couch it into place with a little extra stitch to make sure it stays along the lines. So you can see I came along here and then put a little overstitch there, couching stitch in. And I just find that or the back stitch for outlining things with these napkins seems to work really well, though I have used a chain stitch and a stem stitch as well. It's just fun to experiment and try different things and see what you like the look of the best. If you're going to take your stitches back out, you of course have to do that very carefully, because that's when you can rip your napkin. So just be very gentle and careful when you're doing that. You can see this is the way the leaf looked before, and here it is now with the extra stitches. And then I'm just going to do the vein down the center as well. Oops. I just caught my thread there. And then that's the vein down the center. So you can see how different these leaves look. These are the ones that are not stitched. This is the one I just stitched. And it makes quite a big difference adding in, you know, this bird has all been stitched. And so she's got lots of detail. I used a variegated thread again on her. And so she was basically browns and beiges. And I used a variegated thread with burgundies, pink and brown, and blended it in. Following some of the lines, I outlined her, and then I did some of the lines that were on the napkin, and then I added in a few extra ones as well, just to give her more definition. And it feels really nice, like it has wonderful texture to it. And then I decided to do some ribbon flowers here. These are just straight stitches here with the ribbon. You just come up and go down. Just keep your ribbon from twisting. That takes a little bit of practice. And then I used a sort of a slightly different colored embroidery floss and did the French knots here and here, added a few more here, sort of like, almost like blossoms on the tree as well. And then I did a little half blossom here in that same embroidery floss, just so I can have a couple of different colors on there. I'll just do another leaf here. Again, just coming up. If you use a nice sharp needle, it really does make a big difference. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit here. There we go. Now just get myself. So I've come up at the base of that, and I'm going to go out to the edge of the needle. And then it slides to the center, of course, but I want it over here. So I'm just going to come up out here, catch the thread, and bring it back. And this is where I'm saying I'm doing like a couching stitch. So I've brought the embroidery floss back to where I want it on the outside edge of the leaf, and I've couched it down. And some might do a lazy daisy stitch on there, or you could do a fly stitch. You know what? You do whatever stitch you want. There's no rules on what stitch to use. Just play and do what you want to do. Here I've just brought my needle right back into the middle where I know I'm going to want it, and so then I can complete the couching stitch right away without doing an extra movement of going up and down. And then I'm just going to come at the base again here and go straight up the center and make the vein down the center of the leaf. So there you can see, just pull that tight, you can see very clearly the difference between the stitched leaves and the unstitched ones. And it just, your needle slides through so easily. There it is close up. I should have zoomed in earlier. And you can see the beautiful stitches on that bird and how pretty it looks. And then I'll just finish off the blossoms with just, you know, this is a lazy daisy stitch, French knots. This is just straight stitches with ribbon. And this will be ready then to go on a project, just like the other ones. And they really look pretty added to things. I have to say, I really enjoy the process of doing that. This is, excuse my reach, this is one I finished that's going to be on the front of a little journal. And this is, again, you can see it's the bird, it's one of the little bird houses. I've added in an extra little bird here, all stitched. And then there's the flowers with added extra stitches. This kitty cat is also a napkin. And I stitched around the outside of her and then added in some threads on her to give her some extra texture. I added this little collar on her with a little heart tied on. And then there's her tail reaches out, and then on her tail I tatted this little butterfly and I stuck that on the end of her tail. But the kitty cat, this display of flowers, this little bird, and the birdhouse is all started out as a napkin and then was embellished and put on there. Hope that clarifies. It's really a simple process. Just pick a fun napkin that you want to use and put it onto your project and stitch away. And not all of us are talented in the ways of making little birds or bunnies or other things. And so having this pattern to use, which is the napkin, really helps you to incorporate this into your stitching and have a lot of fun with it. So I hope that helps. Any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'm always willing to answer anything. I can go over anything if you need it. And otherwise, happy stitching. I'll see you and talk to you all again soon. Bye for now.